Well, I was the women's basketball manager at St. Joseph's when I was an undergraduate. That was right around the time that women's basketball was gaining popularity. So the one thing I had to do was to get in good with Mel Greenberg, who was basically the only person covering women's basketball almost in the country on a national level. And he was the manager of the 1969 NIT champions. So he goes from that to falling in love with women's basketball.
To say he's legendary in the women's basketball community would be the biggest understatement ever. He's truly our historian. He knows as much as anybody about what happened in those critically formative years in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. He's got probably the most longevity of any WNBA writer. He was with us from the very beginning when the NBA announced in '96 that we were going to launch the WNBA in '97.
I met Mel when I was working at Villanova for SB Nation. He was wearing an ESPN t-shirt. So I said, "Oh, do you work at ESPN?" He was like, "No, I'm Mel Greenberg," and I probably should have known that. He took on a mentor role in the sense of if I ever needed anything or wanted to get connections at the Big East or anywhere in basketball, he always had them. He has such a wealth of information and knowledge.
Where I'd give Mel the biggest amount of credit is what he did early on in the mid to late 70s when he was bringing attention to women's basketball in ways that nobody else was at the time. He was doing the college poll back in the late 70s, and it was the Mel Greenberg poll, Philadelphia Inquirer poll.
To get women's basketball and say, there's something missing here. Men's basketball has a poll, women's basketball does not, and women's basketball is gaining so much popularity right now. Mel came in right at the time where the NCAA was kind of getting involved in women's basketball, and I think the poll helped really launch the popularity of the sport.
The induction in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame was a dream come true for Mel. Very rare to see a journalist getting that sort of an award. It's not typical to see someone enshrined, but that's how much the women's basketball community thinks about Mel.
He's in every Hall of Fame, and even the WBCA has a media award named in his honor.
At a game, Mel is very funny. I feel like he always knows what's gonna happen. He's like kind of a forecaster and can predict what's gonna happen, and it usually does. He will be remembered as a really nice person and someone who's really goofy and funny, but knows what he's talking about.
He has done more for women's basketball than any person has done for that game. Everyone who knows Mel calls him now the guru. That nickname is self-proclaimed, but it's also fits perfectly because he is the guru of women's basketball.